All right, hello and welcome. This is the Sustainable Leadership Series, and today we have Matt Maroon with us. He is the CEO of C-Motive Technologies. So Matt has held product management and leadership roles in a range of startup companies. In total, Matt is a six-time veteran of clean tech startups focused on the next generation energy storage technology. So Matt is here today to talk to us about C-Motive, about sustainable technology, and its role in helping companies achieve their sustainability objectives. So welcome, Matt. Thanks for being here.
Yes, Jesse, thank you so much. I'm excited to share what opinions I have. So
Awesome.
This is great. Yeah.
Great. Well, how about to get started, you just share with us what is C-Motive? Tell us about the organization and what you do. And sort of, I know the company has sort of four core pillars of sustainability. What are those?
Yeah. So C-Motive, we're a venture-backed startup company. We're headquartered in Middleton, Wisconsin, so just west of the Beltline in Madison. Technology is a spin out of technology that was originally discovered at UW-Madison by our two co-founders, Justin Reed and Dan Ludis. And basically what we're doing is creating the next generation of electric motor and generator. So you may not realize it, but depending on where you're watching this at home or in the office, there's probably 20, 25 motors that are constantly spinning around you. So whether that's the, overhead fan that you have, or the compressor in your air conditioner, or like the motor inside of your coffee grinder in the morning, motors are just one of those ubiquitous things that everyone seems to take for granted. And because of that, the technology really hasn't changed in the past 30, 50, even 100 years. So what we're trying to do is trying to bring a different, more sustainable technology to motors. So very specifically, instead of using rare earth metals and permanent magnets and a lot of copper inside of our machines, we use the same force that you would have if you took a balloon and rubbed it against your head. So our machines use static electricity. So it allows us to use a lot more commonly available, more sustainable materials, printed circuit boards, minimal amounts of copper. And the net result is, embodied carbon wise, lower embodied carbon product, but also much more efficient in application. So delivering both scope 2 carbon emission savings, and then, what everyone cares about is savings on their utility bill. So we're a team of 19 people right now, and just, kind of making that transition from research and development and prototypes to having pilot units that we will be putting out in the field with select customers starting next year. So really an exciting point for the company, just hitting that growth period of moving out of the lab and into commercial product.
Awesome. Yeah. And I know I have young kids, so I can really get the visual of rubbing the balloon in your hair and what that static electricity is. So that's great. And so your technology is around sustainability, and are you organizing the company in that way as well?
Yeah, I mean, sustainability for us is it's one of the primary value propositions that we see that end customers care about. There's a lot of big name companies that have made public commitments to sustainability, but don't always know how they're going to actually achieve those goals. And so what we want to do is obviously lean into that aspect of our products, do as much as we can ourselves, being a small company. We have the luxury of, implementing more sustainable practices, both internally. And so it's a big part of everything that we do. We obviously have a lot of challenges, just technology and being a startup company and fundraising, but we do like to keep sustainability front and center, both when we talk to customers as well as what we do internally.
Yeah. So how do you define sustainable technology this day and age? Can you share a little bit about that? And then also, how did you come to lead this company?
Sustainable technology, it's like, I think everyone has their own definition. So if you go ask 10 different people at 10 different companies, you're going to get 10 different answers. What I hear about a lot from people that we talk to, both investors as well as customers, is that they think about sustainability really with respect to carbon. So carbon is still kind of the main metric to measure whether or not something is sustainable. So looking at the embodied carbon content of whatever product you have, or how much electricity a certain process uses, and therefore what it turns into in terms of carbon emissions. So that really is what focuses a lot of what we think about in terms of sustainability. We also try to think about total life cycle costs of both the product, both in terms of the actual cost of it, as well as the carbon side of it, what we can reuse, what recycled materials we can use inside of our processes. So it's really a long-winded answer to say that there is no like single, unfortunately there's no like definition that everyone agrees upon about what is sustainable and where we should be putting our efforts.
Yeah, we hear that a lot from businesses. It's such a, there's the term ESG, environmental, social, and governance, which has been such a huge topic in the last year. And I've said this numerous times. I'm like, I think people get that more because we've been talking about these same things for 2 decades in sustainability.
Right.
But when you say the word sustainability, that means so many different things to so many people. When you just say environmental, social, and governance, well, it kind of narrows the fence line of what we're talking about. So yeah, I understand that in terms of technology too. So, and how did you come to lead the company?
Yeah, so I joined the company just over 2 years ago. My family and I, we actually relocated from Pittsburgh to come here. So before C-Motive, my background is all with startup battery companies. So I've spent, it's embarrassing to say how many years I spent at different battery companies, but going all the way back to 2004. So like during the first clean tech bubble in venture capital, I was at a battery company in Illinois, moved to Seattle, then to New York, and then to Pittsburgh, and then to here. So I have always been drawn to 2 different things. So one, technology is always fun to work on, particularly technology that has such a broad base of applications. And that's what I was super excited about because I had never thought before about how many motors I interact with on a day-to-day basis. It just, again, take it for granted. You just assume that you turn a switch and the motor comes on. And so when I started actually thinking about it and then how much impact that could have, that was very exciting. And so that's what drove me to really pursue C-Motive as much as anything else was wanting to do something a little bit different from batteries, but really looking at the team here and how great everyone was and committed and quite honestly, just how damn smart everyone is here. And then, the impact that we could actually have when successful. And I think that is not something that everyone can talk about. It's just how global of an impact they could have.
Absolutely. I mean, we work with businesses every day, and so many of them have been on this journey a long time, many of them just starting. But really, it's like when the quote unquote low hanging fruit is done in a company, it's sort of like, well, what do we do now? Right? There's not that much more greenhouse gas or carbon we can reduce, but your technology is playing a key role in that piece of driving down those carbon emissions by looking at a part of equipment. Like you gave us this great example of everything that's around us every day inside of companies. So what do you think makes the technology such an important piece of sort of driving sustainable outcomes, and what parts of it do you think sometimes get overlooked?
So I'll do the second question first. I think that a lot of the things that get overlooked are energy efficiency, and technology specifically focus on energy efficiency or making the things that we take for granted better. I've spent some time, not just in batteries, but I was at a renewable energy developer. We were doing utility scale solar installations and battery stuff. And everyone gets super excited about thinking about, oh, we're going to build a 500 megawatt solar farm, or we're going to build a 3 megawatt wind farm. I think that's what, unfortunately, most people think about when they think about how do I make a sustainable difference. The first thought is renewable energy. How do we get additive renewable energy on the grid? How do we use it more efficiently? And the things that get overlooked are the easier, quite honestly, the cheaper solution. So the push in the past decade to go to LED lighting. I know costs came down for LED. Obviously, the value proposition always has to work for a business to do it. But if you're not using LED lighting across your facility right now, you are literally taking $20 bills and lighting them on fire. There is no excuse not to be implementing LED lighting, but lighting is not a sexy application, right? No investors go into it and say, oh, we want to really invest in lighting. So lighting motors kind of fall in that same sort of trap of you take them for granted, you never look at them. Who really invests in motors? And so I think there's a lot of things like that you just look around your daily operations, and instead of just saying, well, this is kind of the way we've always done it, there's opportunities for new technologies, new way of doing things, to really drive home energy efficiency, which is the thing that I think is most often overlooked. And the first question, I'm having a hard time remembering exactly what the first question was.
What was it? Yeah, what makes sustainable technology so important? And I think the sort of follow question to that then is, what do you think the driving force for an increased desire for green technology is in the market today?
Yeah. So I'll try to answer this without getting too much on my soapbox, but so I don't know exactly when this is going to be posted, but today, June 30th, was the day that the Supreme Court overruled the reach that the EPA has on carbon emissions, particularly with respect to power plants. So I think that what we're seeing is that we cannot rely on the systems that maybe we have relied on in the past to make the changes that have to happen. And so the power to make those changes and to really enforce them come from consumers, because if there is anything that drives global capitalism, it is a consumer saying, I'm not going to buy from this brand unless I know that they espouse the same values that I have. And I think we have seen a really good job of companies responding to that with respect to just environmental sustainability to start with. There's a whole other segment, right? Social sustainability, but from the environmental standpoint, and you see these companies that are signing up for, the RE100 list, or companies that are making pledges to their shareholders that they will be graded against for reducing carbon emissions and going to net carbon zero, because we as consumers have made a statement that we got plenty of other options. We won't buy from you unless you do it. And so sustainable technology is important, because if you are a big shipping company or a big e-commerce company that uses a lot of motors and conveyor belts or electric vehicles or whatever the case may be, you got to find a way to meet those goals, because you put them out there, and there's only so many, solar panels you can put on your roof. There is only so much greenwashing you can do by buying wind wrecks out of Oklahoma or wherever you're buying them from. And so I think a lot of companies have to look at new technologies and are being forced to do it to just fulfill the commitments that they made that are being driven by kind of the rest of us. And so that's my soapbox. I'll leave it at that.
I hear it, and I feel like I could go off on a lot of tangents with you on that soapbox. Yeah. But I mean, you're so right that it's same to my point earlier about companies who have been at this for so long need new ideas. And I think sustainable and green technology is the next answer to solving some of those issues and challenges. And, hopefully a product like yours, if you connect with a program like Focus on Energy, they can provide incentives to switch out motors, because I mean, I'm not super technical, but I would assume motor is fairly efficient. I don't know how often those need to be replaced, but I've not replaced.
Depends on how well you take care of them. So just to give you an example of like the difference we're talking about, because it does make a difference. So if you have a shipping facility and you've got a couple of conveyor belts and you got motors running those conveyor belts, just like normal shipping size boxes. What we have heard and what we have seen is that the way that you would size a motor is to say, well, I need a motor with this much power, so I'm actually going to buy one with this much power because I want to have that factor of safety, right? Engineers love adding a factor of safety. And then you buy your cheap motor out of a catalog that maybe has 80% efficiency, and then you attach it to a gearbox, which is needed to change the speeds. And all of a sudden that motor, it's like 55% net efficiency. And so because it's always been that way, no one looks at that line item and thinks to themselves, well, I wonder if I could do better there. But if you could go from 55% net efficiency to 90+%, you're talking. So for us, when we run the math, it's like under a 2-year payback, it's $1,000 annual savings, which, gets people excited. And then that translates to 2 metric tons of carbon a year that's avoided because of the electricity savings. And so, cool, you're kind of a small mid-tier company. You've got 5 motors you're running, 10 metric tons of carbon may not sound like much a year, but if you are the United States Postal Service and you have facilities with thousands and thousands and thousands of motors, all of a sudden that really aggregates up. So again, these small differences, when you look at the volume of some of these products and motors, lights, more efficient HVAC systems, they can really add up to make a real tangible difference.
Yeah. Of course, Amazon came to my mind when I thought of warehouses with conveyor belts. So
Yeah.
it sounds like you might need to hook up with them.
UPS, DHL, we are more and more reliant on electrification. We are more and more reliant as a society on like having something shipped to my house. Like these macro trends are not going away. So that's the exciting part for us, is that like those trends are definitely at our back. Let alone the raw materials have gone up in price. It's not like raw materials are going to go down in price anymore. So again, I don't want to continue to like just sell the C-Motive thing, but I think there are a lot of companies out there, and there's a lot of ways to look at the raw materials that you are using and look at them through the lens of not just the cost of them, but what it actually takes to get those in-house, whether you're buying them from overseas, whether they can be sourced regionally, the processes that go into them. All of these things matter, and they all aggregate up to trying to create a much more sustainable, much more environmentally conscious society about what we usually take for granted.
Yeah, absolutely. And really you're just making it sound like a no-brainer because it is in a lot of ways. But, I just appreciate the way that you're explaining all of this, because we talk so much about like systems thinking and sustainability and helping move companies from, random acts of environmentalism to a strategic approach to sustainability. And thinking about the things you're bringing up and we're talking about here is really taking a deeper look at how the systems are set up. Not just in a facility, but how parts and components are made. And to your point of, raw materials, so many times when we talk to companies about waste, they're looking at what they're sending to the landfill. And, that conversation always comes back to, well, we input, right? Like you actually get to save a lot more money if you buy less. Yes, we want to reduce the waste streams, but, so this conversation is making me think about all those systems and how technology can really help us play a role in both greening our grid, so to speak, and our processes inside our businesses.
And I think this is obviously kind of the mission of the Wisconsin Sustainable Business Council, but just education in general, right? Sustainability and environmentalism in its current form, it's not like we've been living with this stuff for decades, right? This has really been I would say the past 10 years, maybe 8 years, that people and businesses have really started to think about carbon emissions, embodied carbon, where they're buying their electricity from. So, if you've been in industry for 20 years or 30 years, and all of a sudden now that you have this added element of, oh man, I got to fulfill this I got to check this other box of not just saving costs, but saving carbon, being more environmental. That's a big shift in thinking. And it's not something that, just very honestly, that a lot of people kind of grew up with. And so I think there's a huge element of just education that, hey, you don't have to do things the same way. You can ask the question of, why do I spec my motor the same way I did 20 years ago if things have changed, right? Why do I buy this much input material if my processes are now more efficient? Or can I find more efficient processes? But someone's got to spark that, and someone's got to, right or wrong, I think the adage of like, no one ever got fired for doing the same thing that their predecessor did, rings true for a lot of companies. And so, people by nature don't tend to take a lot of risks in those environments. And so I think just education right off the bat is one of the biggest things. And that's educating, us trying to educate people to sell motors, or, what the WSBC is trying to do to just broaden people's ideas of like, there are a lot of different ways that sustainability can be put to work and still, be beneficial for your business.
Absolutely. And again, this really speaks to the point of why I chose to do this series focused on leadership, right? Because I've been working in this space so long, and sometimes it just comes down to our own personal effectiveness as leaders in influencing change inside of our companies. And so you've obviously been successful at that and are continuing to work on that. So what leadership qualities do you think are needed to lead us into the future, specifically with sustainable technology, but also a broader in the lens of sustainability?
I think taking risks is still the biggest one that I've personally seen. And that's here at C-Motive, that is with some of my prior startup company. Not all of my battery startup companies have been successful. I was part of a pretty well-known battery company out of Pittsburgh that was spun out of Carnegie Mellon that was not as successful as we wanted. And so, but we tried and we did everything we could to try to make it work. And sometimes things don't work because of bad timing, bad market conditions you can't control or whatever. But if people don't try or go into it thinking that like, kind of what's the point? Every business, every sort of industry needs that catalyst person that says, well, I'm not scared of failing. I'm just going to try it anyway. And I think that's for better or for worse, that's what I try to do is kind of act first and then think about it second. Just because if we don't try, you don't know.
Yeah, I like that. And I think that relates to a lot of listeners from the standpoint of just inspiring them to not take no for an answer, right? Like, sometimes sustainability professionals get frustrated because things don't move fast enough. And that's absolutely a frustration that we all have to deal with. But it doesn't mean things aren't moving. And just because you get a no now doesn't mean it's going to be a no next year. Or sometimes you just have to be patient and continue to plant those seeds until projects can get funded and implemented. And then people start to see the effects, the positive effects that creates, whether it's through, positive brand or, market share or whatever is important to the company. And then you build off of that success. So
totally. I have to assume that a lot of people, like in the early days, sustainability was kind of it wasn't put on par with the other things that a business can do. And I'm guessing that there's probably still in the vast majority of businesses, sustainability. Yeah, we do sustainability, but we only do it if it like nets us a net business benefit. And so it's probably like put down on the priority list and not super important. But I do hope. I mean, this is what I spent my career doing. This is what I will continue for however long, keep working in sustainability, but like, it's a self-fulfilling sort of thing. So companies that are more sustainable, save more money, generate more profit margin. We are seeing that companies that are sustainable, right, get additional market share over others. It is good for the business. It probably it takes a while, right? That cycle is not, you don't see that result in a quarter. You may not see that result in a year, but year over year over year, you're going to see that benefit. And I have to assume it like is an accelerating benefit too. So I hope it's not like a fad that society is going through. And 5 years from now, we all say, well, we tried, but what's the point? I don't think so, but the results will be what continues to keep the momentum going.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree. So I have one last question for you. Yes. And that really is, you've brought in your leadership skills to numerous startups. What have you learned along the way? I know as kind of the chief salesperson for a startup, right? You have to influence a lot of people. Any just tips of advice or anything you've really learned along the way for listeners that are trying to lead the sustainable change?
When I interviewed at C-Motive in 2019. So pre-pandemic, like in the fall or the winter of 2019, my first conversation with Justin Reed, who's the one of the founders and our chief technology officer, I told Justin on the phone, like, if you are smarter or if you learn more through failure, if I learn more because I failed, then I'm probably the smartest guy in Pittsburgh. And it's because I, at this point, kind of have seen enough things that I've tried that didn't work that I know kind of now, maybe you don't always know exactly what is going to work, but knowing what doesn't work is just as valuable. And so it does lead towards the whole rant I went on 10 minutes ago about just taking a risk and trying something. Like, in a lot of the cases, what is the worst that can happen by trying something new, measuring the results, and then going back and saying, well, the results weren't as good as I thought, or they were exactly what I thought, or they were better than I thought. But if you never actually try and you never put yourself out there, either as an individual or as a business, to take a risk, you are really never going to know. That is the thing that every startup company across the entire world runs into, that they have a new technology and they need a company to, take that leap of faith to begin with. And sometimes it doesn't work, but a lot of times it does work and everyone benefits from it. So whether that is buying a new motor or replacing LED lights or just trying something new, trying to educate the rest of your coworkers or your suppliers, forcing your suppliers to report sustainability metrics to you, so you now know where your raw materials come from and what the embodied carbon content is. I think just trying something is the and not being scared of failure. And I know it's never been a challenge for me, is not being scared of failing, but that's what I would say. That's where I think the biggest thing that a lot of people can do is just to try. Yeah,
I think that's great, because I think fear of failure is more prevalent than we like to believe it is sometimes. We like our comfort zone, we like our boxes, and it's just easy to continue to maintain status quo. And for to push ourselves outside of our comfort zone, we need to be willing to take risks, even if they're calculated and small. To your point, like raising your hand and saying, I actually don't believe that, right? Or how about we try something new? How about we try this? It can be the smallest little action step, is just having your voice be heard and starting there. But I think that's really great advice.
Yeah. So that's
awesome. Well,
I was just going to say, that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, great. I like your 2 cents. So, I know I just watched a great YouTube video that you guys put out about your technology. Could you just tell us where people can find out more about C-Motive and how to follow up with you?
Yeah, so obviously our website is a great place to go to get a little bit of the background, a little bit deeper dive on technology. So it's C-Motive, motive.com. We're pretty active on LinkedIn. We try to share relevant articles to sustainability, motors, electrical efficiency on a weekly basis. You can find us on LinkedIn. And then all of the videos that our extraordinarily talented marketing manager, Rachel, puts together are on our YouTube page. So it's I oversimplified by saying, well, you just take a balloon and rub it against your hair, and that's what our motors run on. But there's a lot more detail to it, and it is really cool if you have that sort of like inclination for technology. She's built some great animation videos and some other explainers on how it works, why it's super important, and most importantly, why we're excited about bringing it out to the market.
Awesome. Fantastic. Well, I'll find some of those YouTube videos and include them in the email to send out to folks with this interview. Cool. And we appreciate your membership, and just want to invite others, if you're not a member and you want to learn more about the Wisconsin Sustainable Business Council, to find us at wisconsinsustainability.com. Thanks so much for being here today, Matt.
Thank you so much, Jesse. Appreciate it.
Yep.